This is the I Hate Football podcast. I am your boy Q. And tonight is the conclusion of my State of Decay series. We're going with part 4 tonight. And tonight we discuss the Miami Hurricanes coaching staff led by Mario Cristobal. First and foremost, happy 305 day, right? To everybody who celebrates, especially my people down in South Florida. If you know, you know. So happy 305 day to them. Happy 305 day, for everybody at the University of Miami, staff, the coaches, everything like that. Big recruiting day and weekend coming up for that program. But tonight we're going to talk about one of the most fascinating coaches to me, in college football right now, and that's Mario Cristobal, right? And I think, fascinating, for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, depending on who you ask. Mario Cristobal is a kind of polarizing guy. Right? And he's a guy who I think in a lot of people's eyes, he's a guy who, is a perfect coach to rebuild the University of Miami. He's a guy that, he in most people's eyes, right? I think we know what it is that he does, right? His superpower is recruiting, but I think in a lot of people's eyes, I think before this season, he was a guy that struggled to maximize that talent on Saturdays, right? And hadn't won at the highest levels, especially since being at Miami, right? He had won some stuff at Oregon, but had not reached the heights that he did this past season, while at Miami. And so to help us break it all down, got my boy, bring him on right here. And you guys know him well, my boy Will from the 305 Sports Now podcast. My man, what is good?
Nothing much, man. It's a great day, a blessing to be here, my friend, and I'm excited to conclude. I've been here since day one, man. Since day one, even with a flu game.
Man, my man was playing hurt. My man was playing hurt in part 2 of the series, man. He was he kind of limped in and but made it happen. And had a good show, man. Showed up a little injured, but made it happen, man. So
I'm not gonna lie to you. Towards the end, as I told you, I was on medication, NyQuil. I think I just agreed with you on everything. Yeah, I agree.
Hey, man. Hey, sometimes that's how it goes, brother. Sometimes that's how it goes.
Absolutely.
For anybody who read the description of the show, we were supposed to have my boy Adrian from the Rainy Day podcast. He is MIA. Right this minute. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But if he does, turn up here in the near future, we'll bring him in. With no issue, man. But but as it goes, we'll adopt the 2-man game. Like we've done so often, and no issues there, man. No issues whatsoever, bro. You know how we do. We make it happen, bro. 2 of us make it happen, and man, just. This is an episode I've really been looking forward to doing, man. Because as a Canes fan, you hear. I'm gonna start off just from the jump, right? It's the bullshit, right? It's the bullshit that you hear from Florida State fans, and it's the bullshit, right? As somebody who lives in Georgia, it's you hear from Georgia fans, and then you hear from just random whoever fans, and it's like, oh, Mario this, Mario that, Mario can't, Mario won't, Mario's incapable. Right? So on and so forth, right? And so, we make the title game this year at University of Miami. Football team makes the title game this year, and I think one of the things we're going to get into is a lot of these narratives that I think existed prior to the season, and some of the stuff that I think now I think it's time to kind of start cutting up that crow, right, and start handing people. Some of that to eat up, because I think, there's a lot of people now that, we're just loving the fact that year after year you can pile on, Mario Cristobal, at Miami, and, oh, he can't this and he can't that, right? He's a recruiter, but nothing else. Well, you know what, man? I think that ship has sailed. I think officially, we're at a point, where, you're looking at Mario, man, and I think he's again, man, those narratives are really something that, and so many of them lazy, in my opinion, right? I think so many people just kind of, regurgitate, some of the stuff that's out there without really, doing their research and I guess, in some instances, oh, because he's not Nick Saban, or because he's not, Kirby Smart, or because he's not one of these guys, then I think people just kind of discount, who he is, his abilities as a coach. And man, and I think we're at a point now, man, where we really, really have to, start, being a little bit more responsible, with the narrative surrounding Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And let me tell you something, man. The whole thing about, oh, he's not a this and not a coach that. He's not. Listen, the bottom line is that most coaches in general, a good football coach is a CEO. All right, you're a CEO, you're the head, you're the face, you're the spokesman of the team, and you hire people around you to do the job that they're meant to do. You hire an offensive coordinator to pretty much create a scheme, of course, in the vision of the head coach, but create a scheme, to basically put points on the board. And you have a defensive minded head coach, defensive coordinator that pretty much calls schemes to make his team better, to make that team better. So the whole idea behind the whole, he's not an X's and O's guy in general. How many X's and O's guys don't win national championships? How many CEOs win national championships, win Super Bowls? A lot of them do. And that's what you want. You want a head coach that understands what's going on, that has a vision for the team, but puts the right people in place by getting the right hires to make sure that you win a national championship. So that's what I think Mario is. Mario is an offensive line guy. He bleeds the offensive line. He's hands-on with the offensive line. Shannon Dawson runs the system with Mario's vision, but nonetheless, he implicates the system. And Corey Heatherman, has a system as well. Every single coordinator that we have had, has been different. Okay, it hasn't been the same thing. It's been different from the 3 defensive coordinators we've had, all different styles, and the 2 offensive coordinators we've had, all different styles. And even Shannon Dawson has adjusted according to the personnel. So this whole narrative about Mario Cristobal not being a good coach, not being able to do X's and O's. You know what? Let me tell you something. Nick Saban, yes, I know he called defenses, but you can't argue that he also had very bright defensive minds on his staff calling plays as well. All right. So that's the thing as well. That's why you have your coordinators. Most coaches that want to be play callers and solely play callers as well, they get stuck in their own ways. They don't sometimes understand their personnel, and their teams don't really exceed or progress as time goes along.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, listen, this is what we do know currently and where we sit, right? Infrastructure, right, around the Hurricanes looks completely different than it did a few years ago, right? And I think that's putting it mildly, right? You're looking at everything that you're looking at, everything in terms of resources. You're looking at everything being dedicated to the program in terms of NIL. You're looking at the facilities, like even just the indoor practice facility now is getting a facelift and
yep.
Being made bigger and more modern, even though it's really not that old. So on and so forth, right? So many things that are happening, on campus that are going to continue, to add, to the stock in terms of the arms race. You're looking at, the recruiting, right? Not only, with Mario, right? We know Mario's a lead recruiter on just about, everybody they land, right? I think I've really gotten to the point now where, I look at everybody outside of Mario as essentially, supplementing, the process, right? I think, when you're looking at a guy like Mario, he's going to be the, lead recruiter, whether it's quarterback, every position on the offense and basically every position on the defense, right? He's visiting. When you look at where he's at, you see him on Twitter and different websites and everything. Oh, he's, here visiting this person. He's there visiting that person. And it's on both sides of the ball, right? There's nobody that he's not visiting, that he's not in on, and some people may take the lead, whether it's position coaches and analysts and whatever the case may be. But Mario, by and large, he is the lead recruiter on just about anybody they land, right? You're looking at, the staff now, legitimate NFL credibility, right? Yeah. Two of the guys that they've had to replace recently, right, were guys that went to the NFL, and they were the 2 guys that truly, if you look at the position coaches, they were 2 of the less heralded hires, if we're being 100% honest, right? Like when they hired Matt Merritt, I mean, you look at it now and the pedigree that he kind of brought in, the programs he had been at, and the whole deal, right? But in terms of an on field role, I mean, again, USF was where they hired him from, right? Nobody knew really who that guy was. And now look at him, running backs coach of the Arizona Cardinals, right? Zach Etheridge, you bring him over from Houston, a guy that again, who was talking about him when they hired him, right? And so now, where's he at, right? Cornerbacks coach of the Arizona Cardinals, right? And so this is what you start to see with a guy, like Mario, who's now, he's, in his bag, as they say, right? He's identifying, really, really good talent. He's bringing those guys in, and now these guys are moving on to, to bigger and better things in terms of the NFL, right? So, these are all just more, just the continuation of what Mario has become, as a coach. Is he's more than a recruiter. He's more than a recruiter. He's a recruiter of good coaches, right? I mean, dating back to his time at FIU, right? You're looking at who he had at FIU. Scott Satterfield, right? What was the guy who he had as OC? Scott Satterfield is now, the head coach at University of Cincinnati, right? You look at a guy like Jeff Collins, who was his DC. The guy's been, he was a head coach at Temple. He was a head coach at Georgia Tech. Now you can argue what Jeff Collins' success has been, for example, right? But these are guys that were well thought of enough to have multiple head coaching positions, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, he's had guys at Oregon that have gone on to bigger and better things, right? Again, now we're seeing this at Miami. So, again, a guy who not only recruits, the high school ranks, a guy who not only, does well in the portal, but now you have to start adding, this guy as a just a recruiter of any type of talent that you need in order to win and sustain winning long term. Mario Cristobal is there right now. So, again, everything you're seeing in terms of the alignment, that exists in the program across all sections of it, all start with Mario Cristobal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, he's the head coach. He is the face of the program, and he's the one that created the system, and he's the one that put the staff together. So everything starts and stops with him. All right, as he starts and stops with him. Every single success starts and stops with him. Every success, every failure starts and stops with him. So I mean, like I said, I think we're blessed to have him. I was very happy with the hire. I know we had some growing pains the first couple seasons, but I'd rather go through those growing pains and be where we're at right now than be a 1-year wonder and then you're struggling. I.e., the program we talked about before the show started, which is Florida State, had a couple good seasons and 5 other crappy ones, or 4 other crappy ones as well. About to be another 5th. So,
dude, I heard something the other day that Mike Norvell, the Florida State program, just kind of as a whole, 6 out of the past 8 years have had losing seasons.
Yeah,
dude, and one of those includes a 2-win season.
Yep.
Right. They had more snow. They had more inches of snow in Tallahassee last year than they did wins for the Florida State program. Just, let that sink in for a second for anybody who happens to be, a Florida State fan like that. That's another, that was another stat that, that when I heard it, I was like, wow, just that warms my heart.
But Q, you know what's interesting? You know what's interesting about that? Miami, through the frugality with the football program, i.e. Donna Shalala, we've never been that bad. Nope. Like, never been that bad. I think we had 1 5-6 season with Randy Shannon, but never a 2-win season. And that was like an anomaly. It's always been 7 wins, 8 wins, the occasional 9 season win. We've never been that bad, even when the university wasn't fully vested in the football program. And for me, Florida State's always been invested in this program. Like, I don't think they ever stopped not being invested in their program. Miami had that lull when she was president, where she kind of, it was there, but she didn't really put as much effort into it, as previous presidents had done before.
Yeah, that's one of the deals, where, those are conversations I've had with people, right? And you talk about where Florida State is now, right? With Mike Norvell, I think going into year 8, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it's year 8. And
possibly. He was 2 years before Mario, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're 7 or you're 8, and who's ever watching, man, if you have that date handy and you want to share it, then go right ahead. But you look at the difference, right, in philosophies, right, and you look at, and obviously backing of the program has a lot to do with it, right, and obviously the reports are out there. Florida State is obviously not in a good spot financially. They can't afford to fire Mike Norvell. And then you're looking at, the exodus, the mass exodus, of players leaving Florida State, right? And again, in I believe it's year 7 of Mike Norvell, right? And dude, if you take away, so year 7, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at what he's done there, and you take away that 1 year, right? And listen, before anybody jumps down my throat or anything, I'm sure you could probably say the same thing about about Miami and Mario Cristobal, even though he had a 10-win season. If you're looking at obviously the totality of the program and stuff, right? So, but you take away that one, 13-0 regular season, and I'd have to look at the total record and what that would do to it. But man, you talk about one winning season, outside of that one, right? And for everything Miami has not been, they've never been that. And again, I'm not here. Listen, Miami isn't Kent State or FIU or something like that, where you're just like, hey, an 8-win season and you're celebrating. Clearly, I know that's not the case. But there again, I mean, Miami has never consistently been as bad as Florida State is right now. And so, I think we'll see what happens with Mike Norvell, but you really see the difference in for all the people hyping Mike Norvell for a while and he's better than Mario and da 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 da. Well, we're really seeing the truth right now. We're really seeing the difference, in just the quality. You're looking at, who he's brought in on staff, who he's recruited, the way he's recruited the high school ranks, what he's done in the portal, so on and so forth. And again, man, you take away that 113-0 season and again, it's even more, it's even sadder when you look at, where Florida State is at, man. So, if you're a Miami fan, man, you got to be really, really thankful. We'll see, what happens with John Summerall up there in Gainesville. But, as of right now, man, I think if you're a Miami fan, you have to feel really good about, Miami's standing in the state of Florida when you compare all the rest of the programs.
Yeah, and it's not even just the state of Florida. I mean, they're getting now a lot of national attention, like the Josh Pates, the JD Pickels of the world. And other podcasters have said, and also people in media have said that Miami just looks different. Like Miami has NFL body types, like Miami's offensive line in of itself is built like they're ready for the NFL today. So those are things that also are very noticeable as well. One thing that I've heard on, I think it was on Donald's show a few times, that even though they're not saying it online, but through conversations, one of the things that they noticed about when Miami played Florida State this past season is how much bigger, more physical, and more athletic Miami is than Florida State. And that's saying a lot, because there was a one point where these two programs were literally on par with each other in the 90s, even the early 2000s. And right now it's day and night between both teams. Norvell's problem is that he was very portal heavy that 1 year. Actually, you can make a case for those 2 seasons. And you have to have a balance of recruiting and portal acquisitions. Look how good Mario has recruited. Look how well his staff has recruited. That we got how many 12 portal players this year, and it's just to fill depth and need, a little bit of need.
I believe so.
About 12 players comparable to other teams. Like yeah, so what it means is your high school recruiting is working. You like what's in your locker room right now. You don't need to go portal shopping every single season for these gargantuan classes to come in and just fill, because you have holes all over the place. Miami is in a very good position this season and for more seasons to come, just because of the high school recruiting and the tweaks without using the portal as well.
Yeah, man, absolutely, man. You're looking at the difference in philosophy, right? And you hear the stories of the Florida State players, right? I know the Desir twins, were a perfect example. Guys who last couple seasons kind of been that way, where they enter the portal, right, and then they end up coming back, but because essentially they extort the program for more money, right? I mean, listen, those aren't my words, right? I mean, those are narratives that are out there, and I don't think it's a secret. I think that just again, it's very well known information out there. And again, I just think that just kind of speaks to, what you created up there in terms of culture, right? And I think, you talk about teams who win, right? And who win consistently and win over a long period of time. And one of the things they always have is culture. And I think that's when you hear those kind of things come out at schools, it's exactly that. I think it's just a lack of culture. I think, the mercenaries, kind of moniker, really kind of comes to mind. And that really is the definition of it, right? Those are guys who essentially are mercenaries, right? They're playing for money. They're not playing, they're not playing for the program. They're not playing for the school, right? I mean, they're playing for the name on the back of the jersey, not the front of the jersey. And so, you're looking at what Mario has created. And, again, man, I think you really, really have to be proud of what it is he's established there. You look at, everything that's important, in terms of what it takes to win in college football, right? We talk about it. We talk about it a lot, on both of our shows. Is you got to recruit, you got to develop, and now the third aspect of that, in my opinion, really that's become huge is you got to retain players, right? So it's recruitment, it's development, and it's retention. And when you look at the way that Miami retained, their players in position rooms that I think most people expected them not to be able to accomplish that, right? We talked about the running back room, which I think honestly, man, most people expected at least a loss, if not two.
Yeah.
Right. You look at Gerard Pringle, they got him back from the portal, right? They got to keep Shamar Brown, who from all accounts had a lot of interest, in Power Four. They got to keep Jordan Lyle, which a lot of people just kind of assumed that he's like, oh well, he's out the door, right? And then on the other side of the ball, the cornerback room, and it's a room that I'm super excited about, man, because I think there's a ton of talent. It's layered the right way. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of depth. And I think you've got experience from your top 4 or 5 guys, right? I think it's a room that's layered the right way. But I think because of that, because of the bodies in that room, I expected there to be, a couple defections, at least just based on, you're looking at, it's just a numbers game, right? But when you're looking at being able to keep those 2 rooms intact, and really what they lost, right? And we'll get into some of the stuff when we talk about the position groups. Some of the guys that they lost, right? I think there was about 2 or 3 that you're like, damn, I wish those guys would have stayed around.
Yeah.
But by and large, culture, breeds that retention, right? And obviously being healthy in the NIL space and everything like that obviously doesn't hurt. But I think when you're getting the right people into the building, you're building that culture. It's a culture that it's a program that people want to stay in and not leave, right? And I think we're seeing that happening at Miami, and you're seeing the exact opposite happen at Florida State.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the thing is, even guys that are 4 or 5 stars, Miami's gotten, even the portal players, the one thing that they have in commonality is that everybody interviews them, says they're all dogs, right? They're all dogs. They're fiercely competitive, and that's what Mario wants, And you have to be competitive because somebody, Jacoby, what's up, man? Thank you so much for the support.
What's good, brother? Appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, stay tuned, man. I got something about Nick and Nicole towards the end of the show. I got to share with you guys. Anyways, all right. So, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so yeah, like they're all a bunch of dogs and stuff like that. Like they're very competitive, and you have to be competitive. I mean, you had a freshman, a true freshman, Malachi Tony, that wasn't even 18 yet when the season started. Leapfrog a couple vets in the slot position. So you better bring your A game, man, out with Miami. Miami, like we've talked about in the past, Miami's in a position right now that sooner rather than later, they're going to be picking and choosing their players versus the hardcore recruiting, because a lot of people are going to want to come to Miami.
And it's what we talked about, right? You're traditionally, you've had your 4 or 5 schools that pick and choose. Everybody else recruits, right? Your Ohio State, your Georgias, your Alabamas, Clemson for a long time was kind of in that conversation, and then everybody else recruits. I think we're really getting to the point now where you're seeing these classes that Miami's bringing in, man, and there's just a lot of hype. Last year's freshman class was really good, right? You had 2 freshman All-Americans, right? Malachi Tony, Bryce Fitzgerald, and now you've got a lot of guys coming in, in this 26th class with a lot of hype, right? Obviously, it begins with the number 1 recruit in the country, Jackson Cantwell, and then you go, you just so on and so forth. There's so many guys you're kind of hearing really, really good things about, and obviously we'll see what the season brings and everything, right? But I think there's a lot of guys that even if they're not starting, right, because I think it's hard as a freshman in most occasions to start, but I think guys who will see the field and who will get some playing time. So really good evaluations, by the staff at this point. Obviously, looking at Malachi Tony, a guy who reclassified, a guy who was 17 when the season started, and a guy who I don't think a lot of people expected a lot from, right? He was a guy who was a 3-star, and I think he was a 3-star because of measurables, right? He's a guy who's on the he's not little, but he's not huge. But again, man, anytime you get a guy who wins the Nat Moore Award, in Dade County, I think he's a guy you have to respect, in terms of ability and who he's going against, right? In terms of competition, you have to automatically, respect that. But nobody had that kid coming in and to do what he did, right? So great evaluation, by the staff. And it just drives home the point when freshmen potential, recruits and potential, commits are looking at that. They're going, hey, that's confirmation that Mario and the staff are going to play the best guy, right? I think you're looking at it, and I think at times you've kind of made, insinuations. Maybe Mario's playing this guy because he's either the older guy or because, whatever. But I think by and large, you're getting to a point, in this program where you're looking at it, and again, they're playing the best guy.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen there. And so, again, man, they just made it a culture and a program that I think people want to be a part of. Obviously, it doesn't hurt to be in Miami. It doesn't hurt to have the backing of a really healthy NIL program. But I think at the end of the day, man, this program is slowly returning to to being a destination. You're looking at where people are coming from. And I know a lot of fans harp on, where are the South Florida kids? Where are the South Florida kids? Listen, man, last year was just kind of one of those years that wasn't great in terms of top end talent, in the country. So what did they do? They pivoted and they expanded their search, right? Central Florida, North Florida, right? Georgia, California, that kind of thing, the Midwest, which they've kind of, started to really, frequent in terms of, the Illinois area, the Ohio area, all that kind of thing, Missouri, so on and so forth. And so, again, man, it's really impressive to see, to see them be able to pivot. Well, listen, this is a year that's a little light on top end talent. Well, you know what? Then we got to expand the search. Mm-hmm. And so this head coach is capable of that. The staff is capable of that. And I think as you continue to win, now you become attractive, outside of the state of Florida. And now it's easier to attract, that top end talent from other places. You're bringing in guys, from, again, plenty of guys from California. I mean, I'd have to really look at the roster and count, but there's double digit guys from California at this point.
Yeah.
Right. And so, again, that just goes to show you, man, your best programs have that reach, right? They're able to go to other coasts and to other time zones and everything and go and get guys, to come in and be big time contributors. So it's really impressive to see.
Yeah. And recruiting has changed so much as well. Like right now, with social media engines like YouTube and Huddle and so on, recruiting's become a lot more national. All right, it's becoming a lot more national, and the South Florida guys are going to come. All right, eventually they're going to start coming. Miami's become a proven product as well, but you get a lot of talent off of basically just spreading your wings a little bit and going to different states. Who would have ever thought 10 years ago that Miami will land a offensive lineman, the top offensive lineman in the country, who's from the state of Missouri, in Jackson Cantwell,
from Nixa, Missouri.
Nixa, who would have thought you would land, a guy from Samoa or Hawaii, actually, in Maui Noa. I know you played here at IMG, but still, who thought you would land a guy like that? Vance Spafford, who's from freaking California. Who would have thought? Yeah, who would have thought? We would have landed those guys. Well, guess what? Now Mario's doing it. Mario also set relationships going years back when he was in Oregon, over in the West Coast, and he's contributed over and has helped us over here in Miami. But the bottom line is that if you look at the roster of a lot of college football teams this year, including a lot of top power four teams, they're from all over the country. It's not just fixated on one state. Okay, so that's just it's just the way it is right now, right? As well. Do I want more South Florida kids? Absolutely. Would I've liked Derek Cooper to be wearing a Miami Hurricane jersey and not saying hook 'em horns, in general? Absolutely. But you know what? Guess what? I like Javion Mallory, and we have a loaded running back room, right, as well. And I like what we have in recruitment in the offensive line. All these guys are gonna look great running through holes. So I'm really, like I said, I'm really happy, and I'm really happy that Mario isn't just fixated on just Florida alone. He's like, I'm gonna get the best players from all over, and he's done a very good job of it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You're looking at, speaking of really good rooms, right? I mean, we'll start, with the offense and look at the running back room, right? Again, like we talked about, man, it is a room that I fully expected for there to be attrition, right? I think, for a long time, leading up to the end of the portal being open, I was like, somebody's gonna be gone, right? And I think to most people's surprise, they saw Gerard Pringle kind of enter the portal. And again, of all the people that you would have told me were going to leave, potentially, Gerard Pringle was not, somebody that I thought. I figured maybe Shamar Brown, right? Maybe Jordan Lyle, but I definitely did not expect to see Gerard Pringle, right? And so, man, to see him come back, obviously, it was super exciting because, the kid obviously can play, has a lot of potential, right? We talked about him, and kind of the lack of carries, kind of as the season went on and the playoff came and everything. And so, I think we had probably a little bit differing opinions, I guess, on that. And I personally was one of those I would have liked to have seen him, get more carries, but I know why he didn't get the carries, right? And so, it was obviously something that had to smooth over with him and the family and the whole deal. but in the end they got it done. And you're looking at now adding a new running backs coach to replace Matt Merritt. And you're looking at, somebody they're bringing in from the NFL, right? Fabian Upshaw, right? I believe is his name. And so, again, people who talk about and they speculate. That's why anytime Mario has to replace somebody and all the speculation kind of starts, I hate to tell people, oh, it's like clickbait and this and that, but it truly is, dude. Like nobody knows what this guy's gonna do. You never ever know. You start hearing of, this is my top 7 or 8 in terms of, who could potentially replace, fill in the blank. And then it's literally somebody who you've never heard of, who you never had any inkling of, and this kind of continues on with that trend, right? Fabian Upshaw, obviously he knew him well because Fabian Upshaw committed to Mario. He was a head coach at FIU, right? A guy who played quarterback. Now he's been he's a quality control coach with the Broncos over the last 3 years. And so, again, not a guy who's been coaching in the NFL or in college, but a guy who's been coaching in the NFL, right? And I think, by all accounts, is from everything I read, is a guy who's very highly thought of. Obviously, coaching under under Sean Payton is there anybody better to learn offense from, right? And so, if there is, it's not many, right? Sean Payton, right, has proven, he's proven it for a long time, that he's definitely one of the brightest offensive minds in the NFL. And anytime you can get somebody from an NFL program, I think that speaks volumes, right? Even though, again, he wasn't a sitting running backs coach, but a guy who was a quality control coach on that side of things, has worked with really good running backs, most recently RJ Harvey over there, J.K. Dobbins, so on and so forth. And so, again, man, that running back room, was a productive one, right? They got RJ Harvey ready and he produced, especially after J.K. Dobbins went down. And so, again, somebody who, young guy, and we know that to keep up with Mario, you got to be young, you got to be energetic, right? You have to, you got to have your running sneakers on, man, because that guy's going to have you, going all over the place, right? To recruit and everything like that. So, again, had never heard of him, admittedly, before, he landed here. But the more you read about him, I think the more exciting, it is. And especially, again, coming from the NFL, I don't think you can overlook that, man. So, again, I think it's an exciting hire.
Yeah, you called it, man. You said that it was going to be we're going to have coaches that we never heard of before and from small schools. So you called it. The first 2 coaching hires, you called it, man. I mean, I'm shocking from the NFL. That's a pretty big deal, man. But no one had that man's name anywhere. Yep. No one has. And Mike Video, I'm sure we're going to talk about, is another one that caught everybody off guard. Which, by the way, I like that hire a lot. Just to let you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll definitely get into it. Yeah, man. Again, I think this is if you're and I think. I heard a lot of people like, oh man, the running back or the current running back room, the current running back room, the current running back room. I think that's, you're right in the micro, right? I think when you're looking at, more of a macro view of it, right? I think, yes, you have to like the talent in the room, the way it's layered, the way they produced, the last couple of years. You got to be excited about Mark Fletcher. You got to be excited about everybody else that comes behind them. But also, if you're looking at, at what your prospects are in terms of that being a position coach, you're always going to be running, you'd assume, right behind, at minimum, a very good offensive line, right? And now you're looking at what you're going to have at receiver, right? And I know you're the running backs coach, but all that matters. Who you're running behind, is obviously important. Who your quarterback is obviously important because you can't line up 8-9 people in the box, right? You're going to have a really good quarterback. Your receivers are going to be deep and talented, and so I think it puts you in a position where you're going to be at a marquee program. Right. I think you're going to be able to make a difference, in a room that's talented. And, hopefully he's a guy that can come in and do what Matt Merritt did. Right. Matt Merritt was a guy who was, super highly respected, by his guys, a guy that, that by all accounts, people love being around. He was clearly a good recruiter. Right. And obviously a good developer, from what it seems like. Right. Because, again, you're different you're different players with different skill sets, right? And got them all to contribute, got them all to buy in, right? So obviously establish a really good culture, established, a pecking order that I think guys respected and were happy with, right? I think people knew their role and were comfortable in there. And so hopefully, man, Fabian Upshaw kind of comes in and and keeps that going and adds a little something extra to to the room, and hopefully, again, continues the recent recruiting success of that position.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. All right, I totally agree with you. And I mean, what a way to start. Okay, you have Mark Fletcher, Marty Brown, Jordan Lyle, Gerard Pringle, Javion Mallory, and Chris Whitley Humphrey. Okay, you got six backs to work with, in camp and training camp, and then during the season that you could rotate on and off and stuff like that. So I think that Upshaw is going to be great. I trust Mario. I trust also the pedigree in which he came from with a guy like Sean Payne, was a very good offensive mind as well. So this running back room is going to be really sick. I like the hire. I think it's going to be good for this team as well. And the connections to the NFL is also very good. I'm sure it'll help Marty Brown and Mark Fletcher when they decide to go into the NFL draft at the end of this upcoming season.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You look at NFL guys, man, and those are guys who, who are going to be, teachers, man. You don't make the NFL if you're not a teacher, right? In terms of a coach, right? You don't become an NFL coach. And obviously, again, he wasn't an actual running backs coach, right? He was a quality control coach, with the running backs specifically. But you don't land any of those gigs, man, unless you're a teacher, right? Unless you know how to instruct, and you just have to be excited for the hire, man, a little bit outside of the box. But this is what Mario does, right? This is what Mario does, and again, we talked about it, and I've always said it, and I keep saying it. Don't waste your time putting out these articles about these potential hires because you're never gonna get it. You're never gonna get it, right? He moves in silence.
Yeah, he does.
These are processes that are super secretive, and he does a good job of keeping that information in house. It doesn't get out, man. Right? He runs a tight ship. Again, I think you look at culture, man. You point to culture, and that's just another aspect of it. Where people are like, hey, hush. There's no leaks. We do this quietly, and we end up getting somebody who's going to be really good, man. So again, man, it's not about who's not here. It's about who is here. And, you look at, what they brought in, obviously a guy who's familiar, because he played under Mario. He's a quarterback, but again, hopefully he brings something to that position room, that wasn't there before. And he's a home run.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm excited. Again, I think it's a home run hire. I really do. And the fact that he has talent to work with as well, and depth and experience as well, and young talent as well. I think it's going to be. I think Upshaw is going to be a very, very, very good coach, and I look forward to seeing him in the cinematic takes on YouTube once again this year. Those are great.
Yeah. I think that room is in good hands, man. Everything you're reading and everything you're hearing about the guy, seems to be positive. And we'll see how it all goes, man. But again, you got to trust Mario's eye. Again, at this point, he's proven that that he knows what he's doing in terms of recruiting and again, not only players but coaches. And listen, he pivots from it, and obviously he's replacing the guys that went to the NFL. So this wasn't a firing and a hiring, but he's shown, right? He's shown in his time in Miami, man, he will pivot, right? It's not about not hiring the right guy. Again, we talked about it previously, like Al Golden hiring Mark D'Onofrio, who can never get rid of. Don't hire anybody you can't fire.
Yeah.
Right. And Mario has done that. Mario has hired people, and again, when they haven't worked, he's shown he will make a change. Right. It doesn't matter. He doesn't get caught up in the nonsense from the media and the whole deal. Listen, it didn't work. Then no harm, no foul. The harm and the foul is not not seeing that and not recognizing that and not making a change, right? But you've seen that happen, with Lance Guidry, right? And before him, Kevin Steele, right? You've seen it happen, with
Josh Gaddis,
the previous OC, which is Josh Gaddis. That was just a disaster. And and so now he's got a guy like Shannon Dawson, man. We move on to the OC, man, and a guy who now again when he got hired, who had Shannon Dawson, right? Nobody did, right? And what he's come in and done, man, with this offense, I think the marriage with him and Mario has been a successful one, man. A lot of people were wondering how that would work because Mario is a power guy, Shannon Dawson a spread guy, and everything like that. But when you look at what it is they've put together, man, and the success his offense has had. I think I don't think you can really argue that it's been a success. Shannon Dawson's time here at Miami.
Yeah, when I interviewed Hal Mummy about I think it's heading to a year ago, he told me that when he was an OC, he always wanted to make his offensive line coach comfortable when he called his plays or however he conducted his screens. his schemes. So I think that's kind of like the approach that Shannon Dawson has. I think, even though he's an air raid guy, he's an air raid by nature, he's very pass happy. And also like the splits are a little wider in the air raid concepts. I think that at the end of the day, he wants to make Mirabal happy and make Mirabal comfortable and pretty much setting up his protections the way he wants. So I think that Shannon Dawson proved he could be kind of adaptable to whatever the coach needs to be without completely compromising his air raid principles. Because there were times this season that he got a little too pass happy when all he needed to do is hand the football off to Mark Fletcher. You can make that case. But the bottom line is that, like you said, it's been a success. Again, his first season, quarterback play was a problem. That team could have easily won 9 of 10 games. Quarterback play was a problem, as well. Second season, you get Cam Ward. Air raid was all over the place. So we lit up the football field as well. And I thought this season he readjusted. You get Carson Beck, different quarterback, a different system, and so on, with a different kind of players. So he adjusted it. I think this year we're going to see a bit of a blend of the Beck and Ward era, where we're going to have him throw it all over the field because Mensah could throw the ball anywhere, and he's going to have a little bit more top level speed at receiver, but he's still going to have a pretty solid offensive line where he could run the football between the tackles. So I think we're probably going to see Shannon Dawson's best season overall as an OC. And for 2026, that's just my prediction in general. And the reason why I say that, Q, is because I think the defense is going to be really good this season. All right, with Corey Heatherman at the helm. So I think that will complement the offense and allow Shannon Dawson to be able to explore more with a more spread concept, like he did with Cam Ward.
Yeah, man. This narrative, right? And we had all heard it before the season started. Mario, the quarterback killer, and obviously, that was previous to Cam Ward, right, going number one overall. This guy's a quarterback killer, and this guy doesn't, he doesn't let his OCs, implement what they want to do, and And listen, man, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
With a guy like Shannon Dawson, man, you look at the spread, right? You have spread concepts in terms of, and again, not pretending to be an offensive coordinator myself and the whole deal, but from everything that I've seen, right, you're looking at what your receivers do. Right. And you've got spread concepts there. But I think when you're looking at what you do with the offensive line, right, where your splits are tighter, where you're avoiding those tackles for loss and sacks and that kind of thing. And so, again, I know a lot of people don't like to hear, the A gap and running in the A gap and the whole deal. But then but listen, man, it's been successful. Right. Yeah. And you're looking at, as the season went on, they adjusted, right. And they drew up some new things and everything, started running outside a little bit more. So, we have to really start, kind of going back to these narratives, right? We really have to start kind of putting these things to the side and, and not think of Mario as like this, this caveman, who can't, adjust and who can't implement different things, right? I think, we've seen Shannon Dawson win, with now 3 different quarterbacks. You're looking at, like you mentioned, when Tyler Van Dyke was here, the system was there for him to be successful, right? They were successful from 20 to 20. Right, from 20-yard line to 20-yard line, for the most part, they were successful. TVD started to see ghosts, right? You're throwing picks, instead of checking the ball down and the whole deal. And again, we won't get too deep into that, but the offense that year, if he cuts down on those picks, like you mentioned, that's a team that can win 9 or 10 games, with no problem, right? I mean, they gave a couple games away, just based on picks, right? Obviously, the Georgia Tech game, which we won't revisit, but obviously that's one that should have been a win and everything. And so. Again, man, when you look at what Shannon Dawson, the number, he had the second leading passer in terms of yards last year in the country in Carson Beck, right? So, again, he's shown in this system he can win with guys who aren't 5-star at quarterback. The numbers they're putting up, at receiver, with guys who, are going undrafted. Xavier Restrepo was really good, but he wasn't a guy who, he's not Jeremiah Smith, right? He's not a guy who's a first-round pick. Jacoby George didn't get drafted, right? You're looking at who else? So it was
Sam Brown was another.
Sam Brown was another guy. Didn't get drafted, right? Guy who has some trades and had some measurables and everything, but a guy who didn't get drafted. So when you're seeing guys who who are putting up numbers in the system and not getting drafted, you have to how did they do it? Well, you got to look at the offensive system, right? And it's a Shannon Dawson system, and then you move on to the quarterback position and how attractive he's made it, right? You're looking at, you're attracting guys, again, you're bringing in a Cam Ward, you're bringing in a Carson Beck, right? Now you brought in Darian Mensah, right? So, so many things kind of go into that, but we have to stop doubting it because look at what you're attracting. right? Like, why do you think these guys are coming here? It's not just a money thing. Are they being compensated? They are. But I think this is a situation where, you know, quarterbacks are looking at this system, and it's a quarterback friendly system, right? He gives his quarterback, you know, some autonomy and some, you know, some decision making ability. And then you're looking at what you're surrounding the quarterback with, and this has become a destination for quarterbacks who want to go high in the draft and who want to, you know, put up numbers and have a chance to win a title, right? And they showed that last year with, you know, with Carson Beck, when a lot of people had some, you know, questions about, you know, his durability and you know, his you know, his headspace and, you know, where he's at in terms of, you know, all these other things. Well, none of that mattered, right? None of that mattered. He played really good football, right? He had a couple games that he wasn't great, but you look at by and large, you know, again, he's you know, he did really well in the system. And so Darian Mensah sees this and goes, man, you know what? If Carson Beck did that, Cam Ward did that, I know for sure I can do that, right? And so I'm super excited to see, you know, how the system, you know, kind of plays out for a guy like Darian Mensah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And on top of that, like he also has a very, very good offensive staff under him, you know, leading off with Coach Mirabal. I love Coach Beard. All right. I think Coach Beard is an excellent recruiter. Coach Beard is an excellent teacher as well, not just in route running, but also in how to block. All those receivers could block as when they block like linemen. You know, they're ferocious. So I really like this. I really like the staff overall, from the receivers coach, of course, the running backs coach as well. So he not only is the X's and O's guy, but he also has a good staff under him that makes his players look better as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're you know, you go to move over to the receiver position, man. A guy like Kevin Beard, who I think has caught some flack from, you know, from some people. You know, Uncle Luke being the you know, the big, excuse me, the biggest Kevin Beard, you know, critic. You know, and I think a guy who, listen, man, I get what some of these defections, you know, have looked like in terms of, you know, Kevin Beard, right? But I think also when you look at, you know, who's left, you have to really you dig a little deeper and you see that, you know, this wasn't a Kevin Beard thing, right? Kevin Beard is a good teacher of the wide receiver position, right? He's always been known as that, right? A guy who played at Miami, right? A guy who people, you know, talked about being a coach, you know, one day after his playing days were done. And sure enough, that's where he ended up. So, you know, a guy that, you know, you talk to people and everybody talks about how personable the guy is. You know, you talk about, you know, the relationship builder, you know, that he is, and a guy who's, again, a great teacher. It just so happened that some of these guys that have left, man, I think you take a deeper look, a guy like JoJo, you know, who left, and I think a guy who, you know, had some stuff that maybe he wasn't doing correctly, right? I think if we're being honest, and, you know, not to bash the kid, but he was doing some stuff that, you know, didn't allow him to get on the field, had some injuries, right? And also a guy that you look at, and he was a receiver, but there was a lot of people that thought he should have been playing corner.
Yeah, Derek Lucy's, you know, one of them, by the way.
Yeah, you know, so a guy who, you know, who's a talented athlete, but wasn't a finished product of the receiver position, right? And so, you know, a guy who just couldn't catch on at Miami. You're looking at a guy like Ray, right? And a guy who, you know, look at him. You know, he was a guy who played mostly running back in college, right? He was a guy who had transitioned to receiver, but he was a more effective running back, and he was kind of starting to really learn the wide receiver position, right? And so on and so forth, man. You're seeing who's left. And again, he's gotten, you know, a lot of flack for that. But then you also look at, you know, the guys that he's put in position to succeed, and guys that we talked about previously, right? Your Sam Browns, your Xavier Restrepos, your Jacoby George. None of those guys were, you know, obviously X and Jacoby George were original signees there. Sam Brown as a transfer,
guy.
You know, but these are guys who, you know, again, man, they weren't 5-star guys. These guys didn't get drafted, right? And so you're talking about development and putting these guys in position to win. That's what he's done. You know, that's what he's done. And so we can't get caught up in this thing. It's like, oh, look at what the guys who left didn't do. Listen, man, some of that stuff falls on them, right? And if they're not playing, right, these are guys who were highly recruited guys. These are guys that the program wants to, you know, put on the field and have them produce. But you have to take care of your part, right? You have to learn the offense, right? You have to do certain things off the field. And it didn't seem like those guys were doing it, right? So they're gone. Wish them the best. But I think this narrative that a lot of people have about Kevin Beard, you know, not being a good recruiter, not being a good developer, you know, of talent, I think is a little bit absurd.
You know, it absolutely is. And again, Uncle Luke has that take, but Uncle Luke he made it very personal because Ray was his guy. So he found every little thing he could find to make sure to basically criticize Kevin Beard, including comparing him, to the receiving core over at Colorado, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous for him to do, as well. Listen, I praise Ray because he gave it a chance. He gave the school 3 years. Okay, it didn't work out. He went elsewhere. I could respect that. All right, JoJo Trader, and when he was given opportunity to be on the field, let's face it, he made crucial mistakes, and given situations, so it got him off the field. So there were attempts to incorporate JoJo in the offense this season, but didn't quite work out. At the end of the day, you just get beat out. You just get beat out. It's a very loaded wide receiver room. It's a wide receiver room with a lot of young talent that looks like it's going to be very good and promising. Van Spafford, Samarian Wingo, Milan Paris, all right, as well, plus the transporter guys you brought in. So where's JoJo going to fit? Okay, where's JoJo going to fit? Any solid writing on the wall. He's reunited. I think it's a perfect fit at NC State because he's reunited with his high school quarterback, right? Who knows him better than CJ Bailey? So I thought it was a good decision for him to leave and go to NC State, So again, best of luck. And I think he's going to be very successful, to be honest with you. But again, this is a very talented and stacked wide receiver room. You don't get that wide receiver room stacked and talented. Kevin Beard goes out and recruits, okay, like crazy just as well. And the reputation on him as a teacher is also out as well. And we've seen how effective Miami's receivers are in blocking. So that, and the NFL scouts love receivers that could do it all and not just run downfield. So that's very attractive to the NFL, seeing wide receivers that not only can run good routes, occasionally blow the top off a defender, go for 50-50 balls, and they can lay out and pancake DBs, and in some cases, occasional linebacker. That's what Kevin Beard brings to the table, right? He's a good coach, and he loves the school.
Culture. That's teaching, and goes back to culture. Yeah. Because you look at receivers who block. Show me receivers who block, and I'll show you a healthy wide receiver room. I'll show you a program that's got culture, because that right there, when you got CJ Daniels blocked, Malachi Tony blocked as a 17-year-old kid who wasn't a big dude. That guy on his best day, he's probably 5'11". It weighs 180 pounds probably. That's a guy who was blocking upperclassmen in terms of corners and safeties and the whole deal. Like, he was not afraid to get in there and mix it up with dudes. So that is obviously some of that. That's a mentality that players bring with them. But that's something that is perpetuated in the program, and that's something that guys take pride in. Like, again, that I'm sure they tell people, listen, man, you don't block, you don't play. Yeah. Right. If you're going to play receiver here, you better block. And all those guys have shown, with this year, the previous years, they've shown that when they're on the field, they're going to block. Like Jacoby George, every once in a while, you're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because that guy, he grabbed a face mask and he hold the whole deal, which is so frustrating. But he was not afraid to get in there and mix it up. Again, as a guy who Jacoby George is not a big dude.
No, he's not.
George is a slender. Slender dude. Mm-hmm. I mean, on a good day, he was 6 feet tall. On a good day, he was 6 feet tall. And on a good day, that guy weighed 180 pounds. And I think I'm being generous. That's probably 180 pounds after eating, a large pizza or something like that. So again, it's not a size thing. It's a mentality thing. I'm sure that's instilled in them. If you're going to play in this offense, if you want catches, you want targets, you better be able to block. And those guys block.
Yeah, they did. And again, going back to Malachi Tony, he's like 180 pounds, smallest guy on the field at times. He looked like, and he was going up against guys that are like 6'1", 6'2", and seasoned players. And not only was he blocked, he was driving them crazy, right? Not just with his blocking, but also what he would do, the trash talking and stuff like that. So again, this receiving core is a well-adjusted receiving core. It's a complete receiving core with everybody fitting into their talent. Route running is key, all right? Because if you can't blow the top off a guy, you better be able to run a good route. They all run good routes. All receivers run good. And if you can't run a good route, you don't get on the field. It's just plain and simple. You drop the ball, you don't get on the field. All right? Malachi Tony's making one-handed catches, laying on his back, like, and in general, and you got guys that have dropped the ball because they take the side off the ball. And guess what happens? You go on the bench. And that's just the way it is. The Kevin Beard hate is as microscopic as a nucleus, okay? It's very minimal. Most people you talk to that are fans and podcasters, they all love Kevin Beard. What's up, Lou?
Lou, what's up, homie? Appreciate you joining in, man. Say hi to your lovely bride for us, man. Hope you guys are having a good night, man. Appreciate
thanks for support, man. Both of you really support, really,
bro.
Really appreciative.
Absolutely. But yeah, man, the Kevin Beard deal, man. Again, it's gotten old. Again, there's going to be some attrition, as you know, the rooms have shown, man. Again, it's hard to keep everybody. It's hard for everybody, you know, to develop, you know, and into stars and the whole deal. But at the end of the day, man, look, the guy's a good recruiter. The guy's a good teacher. And what do we got here, man? Lord Bakington, Luke. Yeah, Luke is the biggest hater of Kevin Beard. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Absolutely.
It's gotten old. It's gotten ridiculous. I mean, the dude has just beat the drum, you know, in terms of the Kevin Beard hate, has beat it. I mean, I'm talking about to death. Like, again, the Ray deal, you know, him being his guy, like, I get it. But at the end of the day, man, again, you got to let that go. You got to see, you know, what he's done with, you know, with guys who aren't 5 stars and the whole deal. You got to see, obviously, give him credit for, you know, what he did with Malachi Tony this year. And again, I don't get the hate. Look at, you know, what they brought in, you know, this year in terms of the recruiting class, what they did in the portal, so on and so forth, man. And obviously, again, Kevin Beard gets that credit. Yeah, because Ray didn't play. Yeah, exactly. You know, and again, man, he's a guy who again was a better running back than a receiver, and a guy who just wasn't able to beat out the people in front of him, man. He couldn't beat out Xavier Restrepo. He couldn't beat out Malachi Tony. And at the end of the day, man, there's no hate, man. You listen, safe travels. And you know, and go do your thing. I think he ended up in was it
East Carolina, I think, right?
Was it East Carolina?
Is East Carolina?
If anybody's got that info, man, just share it with us. I can't remember. I know East Carolina or Coastal was
Bobby
Washington.
Bobby Washington.
So I think East Carolina. I think he went over there with quarterback, man.
Oh my God! My God. Emory Williams. Emory Williams.
There you go. Wow, we already forgot about Emory, huh?
Oh my gosh, man! Poor Emory, man. Poor Emory.
Terrible. Sorry, Emory.
Yeah, my bad, dude. I was an advocate for you too, bro, for a while too. That Pop-Tart game.
Wingo gonna cook. What's that running stack? Yeah, man. And we talked about that recently, bro. The running back room.
Yeah.
You know, you're looking at what you're bringing back this year, right? With Malachi Tony. Right, you got Josh Moore, you have Dalen Upshaw, right, and then you know what you're bringing in terms of the portal with Cam Vaughn, Vendravius Jacobs, Cooper Barkate, and then the 4 receivers that you brought in this year. You know when you're looking at Tyron Evans, you're looking at Samorian Wingo, you're looking at Milan Paris, and then Van Spafford, dude. Those are I'm counting 10. And I may have missed somebody right there kind of the top, but you're looking at 10 receivers that realistically could see the field this year. I wouldn't be remotely shocked if we literally see, as long as they're all healthy and everything like that. I think at some point, especially with your blowouts, right? Obviously, I think your younger guys, you know, will probably play in your blowout type games. But I think realistically, man, you're looking at 10 receivers that at some point this year could see the field, right? And so I told you, man, I've said it before. The running back room, the wide receiver room is a room that I'm most excited about on offense. I love the way it's layered. I love how deep it is, how talented it is. I think you have just the right mix of upperclassmen and young guys, body types, right? Your tall guys, your shorter guys with speed. I think they've added a speed element to the room that I think it's really exciting when you look at, you know, who's going to be throwing on the ball, you know, in Darian Mensah and everything like that. So again, man, a wide receiver room that I think Kevin Beard is going to do absolute wonders with. And when you line up those guys, man, when you go 3-4 wide, you better get ready. If you're the other team, you better get ready, because I don't know that you're going to have 4 corners that are going to be able to play against the top 4 wide receivers that Miami puts on the field at any given time. So good luck to who's ever playing them. That's all I'm saying. Milan Paris and Nasty Blocker. Yeah, man. Like we talked about, right? I think you know that they're looking for a type. And, you know, you got to have that nasty streak to you, man. Milan Paris has the size. Obviously, Tyron Evans is a dude who, you know, again, I haven't seen him play or anything, but he's a dude. He's a big dude. He's over 200 pounds already.
Yeah.
You know, and Wingo, you know, we'll see what happens there. But listen, man, you brought in some big dudes, man. You got 3 of those 4 dudes that committed this year that, you know, came in are well over 6'3". Yeah. I think Tyron Evans is right at 6'3", if I'm not mistaken. Then Paris.
I thought he was 6'4".
Yeah, so he's probably bigger than that. Yeah, and Wingo and Paris are both, I think, 6'4", 6'5".
I think Paris. Yeah, I think Paris is 6'5", and I think Wingo's 6'3", actually.
Okay, yeah, they're all in that.
He plays bigger than his age. Bigger than his size. That's for sure.
They're all tall. They're all over 6'3". Yeah. Obviously, Van Spafford is like 5'10" or something. He's a guy who's you know, he's a 4'3" guy, verified. And so, again, man, body types. It's layered the right way. And I think, man, this room is just, dude, it's really, I'm really, really excited about that wide receiver room. Super, super excited. So, yeah, Paris is the tallest. Yeah, I think I remember that being the case, right? And I think Wingo is kind of right behind him. These are both guys. Paris and Wingo are both guys that ended up being, more highly. Come end of the year, they were more highly ranked than the Northwestern kid that went to Syracuse. Mm-hmm. I forget his name now.
Oh shoot, Calvin Russell.
There you go. They ended up being more highly when they re-ranked everything. They were more highly recruited than Calvin Russell, right?
Yeah, because Calvin Russell's biggest issue was route running. He was tall, 50-50 balls. He's a basketball player, and he was fast, so he could he had a long stride. But the reason why those two had a bigger ranking is because they're better route runners. Than Calvin Russell.
I think they're more polished guys than they're guys that can come in and make a more immediate impact. I think Calvin Russell, I think was a good athlete. Obviously, you see him. He's played some minutes for the Syracuse basketball team. So a guy who was a good athlete, but a guy who I think still had some work to do in terms of his body, right, getting a little bit bigger, being a better route runner. So again, man, who would have thought that we were going to land two receivers that are more highly ranked than Calvin Russell when Calvin Russell was all the rage. So again, man, Kevin Beard has a lot to work with in this room, man. I think this room is going to be absolutely dynamite this year, man. And I can't wait to see how they mesh with Darian Mensah, man. So, go ahead, man.
Yeah, a little fun fact. Do you remember when you did my show and we talked about Samar and Wingo? Do you remember when 247, I think it was on IG, had him predict to go to Florida? Remember we talked about that? Yeah. Do you remember what outfit they chose to list that prediction under?
I do not.
They had him going to Florida, but he was dressed in Miami gear.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was top to down in Canes gear, and 247. They could have probably found any other picture, where he's in uniform, or they picked the one photo where he's literally looked like he came on a visit and he was head to toe in Canes gear, like going to Florida, projected to go to Florida. I was like, what are you guys doing, dude? Like,
love it. Love it. Absolutely.
But you're obviously wrong.
I absolutely love it. And there again, man, when you look at where they went to get these guys, right? Van Spafford, California, Tyron Evans, it's in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. Samorian Wingo, I think, was from North Florida.
He was. He's from North Florida.
Yeah, North Florida. And then, Milan Paris was, I don't remember where Milan Paris is from, but I believe he was outside of the state of Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe he is, yes.
Yeah, so, they went all over the place, to get guys. So, Marion Company, best time evaluators in the country, recruiting these guys when they were ranked low than other teams, try to copy our talent list once these kids start senior. Yeah, man, I mean, listen, we've seen in years past where, there were players that would use the Miami offer, and they would kind of parlay that into other offers, right? They commit early. I think I can't remember how many straight years we had of the biggest flips, right? The biggest decommits, right? They'd commit and then decommit kind of at the end of the cycle. And so, that's not happening now. These guys are committing, they're staying committed, and if anything, Miami is the one, pulling off the flips, right? We've seen Mario kind of pull out the spatula at the end of the, recruiting cycles and flip some guys. Obviously, a couple years ago, right? Gavin Nix, they lost, he flipped to Oregon, right? Drake Stubbs flipped to Florida. But I think that's a thing of the past, man. You're getting guys that are committing, they're staying committed and they're signing and you're not losing, for the most part, anything of any real consequence in the portal, man. So again, go back to it. Recruitment, development, and retention. And all three of those are working beautifully at the University of Miami right now, man. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll continue. I think we're going to continue to see that. And then, you look at, speaking of culture, right? And we kind of touched on them briefly, the new tight ends coach at the University of Miami, a guy by the name of Mike Beatty. And, a guy who, again, nobody had him, right? Nobody had him on any list, right? Of potential tight end coaches. And then you look at him, and then you don't know who he is, but then you start to read the resume, right? And a guy who I think is a super, super exciting, hire at the tight end position, man. A guy who, led, the Army program, and won, to led them to win the Joe Moore Award in 2024, right? First service academy or group of six program, group of five, group of six, however you want to classify them, but the first time that it's ever been given to a service academy
Yeah.
or not a non-Power 4 program at Army. And a guy that when you look even deeper in terms of like his coaching, a guy who, was not only did he coach at Army, but retired, from the Army as a captain, a guy who did, some tours in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
A guy who walked like 7,100 kilometers or something like that. 1 kilometer for, every
Fallen soldier.
fallen soldier, in the fight against terrorism and everything. So, again, man, a guy that, from everything you hear, is a super impressive hire. And a guy that I can't wait to see get in the building and start doing his thing and just add to the culture that's already there.
Yeah, Lord Bakington wrote that we're gonna have a very disciplined tight end room. Yeah, blocking was subpar. Okay, it was subpar. It wasn't the best. That's actually the one weak spot in blocking I think we had this past season. I don't see that as a weakness this season at all. I think Luka Gilbert's gonna block better. I think Lofton's gonna block better as well. Gavin Mueller is gonna block well as well. So I'm really excited about this. And by the way, another thing too was also discipline of false starts. I want to see the player that dares have a false start and have to face that guy, when they get back into the sideline. That guy is an absolute monster. If you see the highlight clips of him, and everything. Tough guy, former captain, like you said, Bronze Star winner as well. You gotta get himself a Bronze Star as well. And, so this guy's seen it all, man. And I like this hire. I think it's a good hire for discipline purposes. It's a good hire in terms that it's proven on resume, all right, as well. And he has that toughness, bravado that goes with what the Miami Hurricanes are right now as a football team. All right, as well. I was going to say recipient, not winner. Recipient is a better word to use for the Bronze Star.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I have to say. I really like this hire. I think it's going to be a great hire, and I'm very excited to see how our tight ends block this season. I don't think we're going to see guys whiff anymore like we did last season as well. So I mean, I think it's great, man. I think it's great.
Yeah, the hire, I think when it came across, X and, the whole deal, I definitely saw some people, that were kind of, I guess, a little taken back, right? Which, again, how many tight ends coaches do you really know around the country, right? Let's be honest, right? Like,
not many.
There's not many, right? And so, again, man, when you're looking at the hire, the guy seems to be a teacher, right? You're looking at somebody who's a captain, in the Army, and two things are certain right there. Not only are you a teacher, right, but you are a guy who knows about culture, right? As somebody who is in public safety, it's something that I'm really proud of, and something that I kind of take seriously is a culture you establish, with the guys you work with, right? And it's nowhere is it more important than in the armed forces, and then add to that being overseas, and seeing, actual war, right? When you're in that type of environment, culture is at a premium. It's a must, right? And so when you're looking at what it is that guy's he's accomplished in his life, I mean, who better, right? Who better than to bring in? And this isn't a guy who's, he's some guy who served in the armed forces. No, he not only did he do that, but he's an accomplished coach, right? And so even if he's not necessarily, a tight end coach, I think his background is O-line. I mean, you looked at Cody Woodie, his background was O-line, right? You're looking at, a guy who's coached tight ends and a guy like James Coley, right? Who, he's coached it all, right? Mike Beatty's been a running backs coach. He's been he played running back. He's been an O-line coach, and now he's going to be a tight ends coach. So, again, man, I think it all goes into just the guy seems to be intelligent enough and know the game well enough to be able to coach just about anything, it seems like. So I think he's a guy who's not only going to contribute to the tight end room, but he's going to contribute to the O-line room also, right? We're looking at what we lost. What did we lose in Cody Woodie? It was a guy who was a pretty good recruiter, right? But when we looked at what was going on in the tight end room last year, is a tight end room didn't contribute to anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we looked at a guy like Elijah Lofton before the season started, and a guy who everybody had super high hopes for, and did nothing, right? So I'm really interested to see, if he's somebody who they keep at tight end, or somebody who they use more of like a weapon, fullback, H-back type thing. We'll see. But again, I think this is a guy who's going to be great for the room, and I can't imagine that this dude is not going to be able to walk into, a recruit's home and be able to connect with them, be able to connect with the parents. This is a guy who obviously, man, to be in the armed forces and to be a captain in the armed force in the army, and have gone overseas and seen war and everything like that. This is a guy who obviously is going to demand respect, right? This is a guy who he's going to set the standard. He's a guy who's going to be a culture guy. And I can just see him and Mario just being just absolute, just tied at the hip. I think these guys are going to be great together. And I think this, to me, I only see this as a really positive get for the program.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I think that it's, again, walking into a room, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, that the military bravado that he's going to bring to the recruits home as well. A presence, when he gets on that field and he's coaching the position, a guy that looks like, one of the guys, it looks like he can still play in the NFL as well. I mean, again, I'm excited I really do like this hire. And again, way out of left field, no one had this guy on his radar. Everybody had James Coley, everybody had, like Ed Pata coming back in as well. And this guy just comes way out of left field. Is an offensive line coach, not a tight ends coach. But Mario also coached tight ends as well at one point. And also an O-line coach and also O-line. So the transition is not difficult to be a tight ends coach, O-line coach, etc., because they both inline block as well. So again, I think this is a good hire. I do expect a lot better. Just a little bit on Cody Woodhill. I think losing Elijah Royal, losing also Riley Williams, who was also a pretty good blocker, I think hurt the tight end room as well. Elijah Lofton was hurt, if I'm not mistaken, during the beginning of the year. So that kind of, I think, was a bit problematic. He just played hurt. But I'm not going to lie to you. Alex Bauman was hit or miss. I mean, he was hit or miss. Yeah. He was sometimes would have a great block, and then you would see him on film, and he whiffed. And Alex Bauman's best days were not in the playoffs. The drop ball in the national championship game, plus not stepping in front of the guy during the block punt, that cost us the national championship. I'll be honest about that as well. I don't think you're going to see that this year. I think no one is going to whiff on a block with this man as the head coach.
Yeah, so Lord Bateman says that Heatherman's cousin got the tight end job. Yeah, man, I think. Listen, I don't know if they're blood related, but they're definitely cut from the same cloth, without a doubt, man. They're going to be.
Wants a Templar Knight.
Yeah, dude, they're going to be. There's going to be a lot of intensity on that field, man. I think there's going to be. I think discipline, is something that's going to be reestablished, because again, I think for this program to take the next step, I think they have to clean up some things, and I think discipline is one of those for sure. I think this is a guy who's going to demand it. And again, man, a guy who I think is going to set the culture in that room, where again, he's going to be respected. I think guys are going to love playing for him, man. So we'll see how it goes. Also, I'm not, it's not that I don't agree with you, Lord Baginton. I'm glad Bauman can kick rocks. But also, I will say, and I'm going to say it because Will just brought it up, I am of the belief that if you watch that play that was blocked, to me, that was the punter's fault. That was the punter's fault, in my opinion. If you look at where Bauman was and where the punter drifted to, the punter drifted outside of the hash. He literally drifted all the way into that block. So Bauman, to me, I don't know that Bauman did anything wrong. I think Bauman's expectation was he's going to step up into I guess the pocket or whatever and punt the ball. I don't think that he expected drift as far as he did. Now I know he's obviously Australian rules, punter and the whole deal. So obviously he's not a traditional punter, but I don't think Bauman, expected him to drift all the way out, outside of the hash mark. So, to each his own. If you want to blame Bauman,
but it wasn't a punt rush. They were punt coverage. So all he had to do was put his shoulder and bump the guy, and that's it.
I still think that was a punter's fault, bro. I think the guy who blocked it, I think he literally just went like this and stuck his arm out and blocked it. Honestly, I just don't think that was Bauman's fault.
I'm not against you. I think habits played a role, and I think he's used to punting that way, and he was a victim of his own habits and so on. But honestly speaking, I get you. If he moves forward, he doesn't block. He probably doesn't. He doesn't block that punt. I will be honest. But the bottom line is, though, if everyone knows that the punter goes to that direction, all Bauman had to do was just stay in front of the guy. Hell, he could have fallen down, and got chipped and fallen down, and he still gets that punt off. So, I mean, he completely whiffed. And it is what it is. Either way, I don't think you're wrong, Q, to be honest with you, because I understand where you're coming from. I mean, Joe Rose made the same claim that he understands he's Australian, but if he would have just went forward, he probably gets the punt. He does get the punt off because Indiana wasn't really in a full rush. But still, dude, man, get in front of the guy. That's all we ask you.
Yeah. Lord Binghamton, yeah, man. I don't think Lofton was healthy the whole year, man. I think he had something going on. And then he went a stretch where he just couldn't catch a cold. I mean, so I think he's got to get more. He's got to get more consistent, man. He's got to get more consistent. And a guy who, again, man, doesn't have that traditional tight end body, right? You're looking at the rest of the people in that room. He's by far the shortest. Gavin Mueller is a big kid.
Yeah.
Luca Gilbert is a big kid, right? You're bringing in Izzy Briggs, who's like 6'6" or something like that.
He's tall.
So on and so forth, man. So, again, I think we're going to see, man. We're going to see, what they do with Lofton this year. I just don't think he's a guy who's going to be a traditional tight end. I don't think he's a guy who you can depend on to like, inline block necessarily, right? Again, a guy maybe you can get out, on the edge and block, in the run game and everything. But I don't think, a guy that's built like Lofton is built to take on, 6'4", 6'5" defensive ends and everything. I just don't think he's got that body type or that ability to him right now. So we'll see. I may be wrong, but I don't see Elijah Lofton being a traditional tight end moving forward. So, we'll see how it goes. We won't harp on it for too long, but yeah, I said, we lost that game, on the special teams, right? They kept Mendoza to under 200 yards passing. They didn't let him throw a touchdown pass. We outrushed them, had more tackles for loss, more sacks, the whole deal. That game was lost in special teams. Missed the field goal and gave up a punt block for a touchdown. They lost by 6. That's 10 points right there. That's where the game was lost. So 100%. I agree with you. Gavin is like 6'7", 6'8". You meet Gavin like Mueller? I don't think Gavin Mueller is out. I think Gavin Mueller is closer to like 6'4", I think, something like that.
Oh, I'll tell you right now.
I think he's like 6'4". So I think Luca's like 6'6".
Yeah, he's tall. Luca's like 6'7".
Luca's like 6'7". And then he says Lofton's an H-back. Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think again, you're looking at what Lofton is, man. That guy may be 6'1" on a good day, and I don't know that he's 6'1". And his body type to me is just more of a fullback H-back type guy. I don't think he's an inline guy on any level, to be honest with you.
6'5".
6'5" Gavin Mueller?
Yeah, 6'5".
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, but dude, everything I've seen from that kid, man, he looks like a monster, bro. He looks like a monster. He moves well. He's a weight room freak.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what with Lofton, Gavin Mueller, and Luca Gilbert this year, man. I think I was excited about Brock Schott. I hated that he transferred because I was really excited. I think he had some Brock Bowers in him. In terms of body type and movement and everything like that. But hey, man, it is what it is. He's no longer here. But I think that room is looking. Really. I think he's looking really good, man. They got some talent. Obviously, not a lot of experience, but there's definitely a lot of talent and some really good body types in that room for sure. So we'll see. Yeah, Gavin was like, yeah. I know he's fast, man. I know he's fast. The kid is, again, the measurables are there, man. He's a big kid. He can move. He's a monster in the weight room. So I think this year, I wouldn't be surprised, man, if he sees a field and contributes, man. So we'll see what happens.
He played Wildcat in high school too, as well. He was also sometimes a quarter. He also played at quarterback, and he made throws. It wasn't just a gimmicky guy. He made some throws too.
There you go, man. So yeah, man. The offense, man. I think the offensive staff, I think, is in a good place. The offense is in good hands with those guys, man. And I'm really excited. I think this is a year where, just like the defense was kind of the catalyst. This past season, I think in 26, the offense is going to kind of lead the way, and I think it's got a lot to do with obviously the talent on the field, but I think the coaching has a huge part to play in that too. So, listen, man, the defense was kind of the linchpin, like we mentioned, this past season, and it all started with the front four, man. You're looking at those front four, or at that front four, I should say, and the Jason Taylor, Damian Lewis tag team right there with the front four, man, I think is kind of a match made in heaven, man. The guys really, developed this year, man. You saw, Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. Obviously, those guys are going to be. It seems like Ruben Bain is going to be obviously a very high draft pick. I would venture to guess Mesidor is going to go middle to end of the first round from what people are projecting. So, a guy that, wasn't projected that way before the season started. Right. But I think, in that scheme, And with the direction, of Jason Taylor, man, just turned himself, into a stud. He had the benefit of playing his natural position where, he wasn't previously, due to a need and everything, man. But when he was playing only defensive end, man, he turned himself into a monster, a great pass rusher, a guy that can play the run. Obviously, he's a little bit older. So I think that kind of drops him, in the draft a little bit. But a guy who you have to look at, Jason Taylor and say, man, I love, and listen, I talked about him, and I talked about wanting to see more from him because I knew the guy was a great relationship builder, a really good recruiter, but I wanted to see more in terms of development from defensive end position. And I think we saw it this year, and you just gotta, you gotta like what you have in that room moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm excited about the defensive line. I think it's still gonna be really good. You can't replace a Mesidor or a Bain. I mean, those guys are generational players, especially Ruben, a generational player. But I mean, this team is still stacked, man. I mean, I'll be able to talk about the weight of Marquise Lightfoot, but he killed Bo Jackson in the in the semis. He ran him over completely. I mean, it was just completely. It was nice to see. All right, as well. So I mean, I'm excited, and I think, of course, you have Marcus Lightfoot, you have Damon Wilson, you have, of course, Hayden Lowe, who's going to be healthy this year as well. You have Booker Pickett. You have all these guys, that could come in. This room is so loaded. Cole McCauley's playing tight end. Okay, absolutely. That's loaded. A 23.5 sack kid out of Alabama. I think he was Alabama's defensive player of the year. 23.5 sacks. It's going to tight end because you have so many defensive ends and so many linemen that they couldn't find a spot for him. That's how good this team is going to be, and that's how young too. It's a very young defensive line crew with Justin Scott, as well. Who's a very young guy. And then of course you have, Lightfoot, Pickett as well. Very young guys as well. It's going to be a nice contribution. Will the sack totals drop? I'm not so sure. I think Miami's schedule is much more favorable this year. But I expect a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of TFLs, a lot of sacks this upcoming season. Because again, Heatherman's system is in year 2, and you just have JT and D. Lou still as assistant coaches.
Yeah, man. The defensive ends, man, you got to be really excited about, man. The depth there. When you consider who your possible starters are going to be, you're looking at any two of of Blunt, Peyton Lowe, Marquise Lightfoot. My money would be more than likely on Blunt and Lightfoot. With Justin Scott and Ahmad Moulton at tackle. But you see what they're going to be able to bring in terms of your depth, right? You're going to be able to.
You think that Blunt starts over Wilson at the end?
Well, yeah. Oh no, I forgot about Damon Wilson. Yeah, Damon Wilson. Yeah, okay. Damon Wilson, Marquise Lightfoot. Blunt plays a lot. Really? Hayden Lowe plays a lot. Okay. Then you have you got Booker Pickett, Herbert Scroggins. You just got a lot of bodies, man. You got a lot of bodies. And, you're just going to be able to come in waves, right? So I think, like you mentioned, I don't know that you're going to have, just one guy with just a bunch of sacks. And I just think the sacks are going to be really evenly distributed, based on, the bodies you've got at the position and how well those guys are going to play. And then add to that, man, what you have at D tackle, man. You bring back Ahmad Moulton, who could have easily, left, to enter the draft. I'm sure he was compensated well to come back. But a guy who's developed really well, a 3-star guy, right? Not a major recruiter or anything, but you got Justin Scott, who was a huge recruit, a 5-star. Keona Davis backing him up, who I think was an underrated, addition in the portal. Jarquez Carter, and so on and so forth, man. So when you look at the depth and the talent on this D-line, man, again, those guys probably aren't Ruben Bain and maybe not necessarily Keem Mesidor. Again, man, those guys just didn't come off the field because of the way they played the run, right? Whether it was a pass, whether it was a run, those guys were on the field. And so, we'll see, Damon Wilson, I think if there's one knock on him is I think he's a guy who probably has to, get a little bit more diverse, right? Be able to do more than rush the passer. But there again, man, there's just a lot of body types, man. You got a lot of really highly recruited dudes. I think a lot of guys were just ready to take that next step, man. And I think when it's all said and done, man, I think this D-line, I think it's going to look a little bit different, maybe. And then the snaps, I think there's a lot of snaps to redistribute, with Bain and Mesidor gone. But I think there's a lot of dudes that are really, really itching to get on the field and show what they can do, man. And I think they're going to make it happen.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's going to be a good year for them. I think they're going to rotate more because they have so much talent. Let's not forget Herbert Scroggins III as well, who saw a little bit of run last season. And I do think it's going to be a team that's going to put up a lot of TFLs. and I think they'll put up a lot of sacks, especially in the early part of their schedule, which again is favorable to Miami. And I think they're going to show out when they go to South Bend and play Notre Dame, which I'm excited, by the way, to see.
God, I can't wait for that. Yeah, man. The D-line, the D-line room and the coaches, man, obviously, continuity, with those guys coming back and all the talent coming back. So, definitely expect them to be, significant, contributors, once again this year in 26, man. I mean, I expect nothing less than that. So, you move on to the linebacker position, obviously a linebacker position coached by Corey Heatherman, who's a DC. And the of all of the three position groups on defense, man, this is probably the one that I'm least excited about. It's also the position group that I think if you've got the front end playing really well, right, I think that's just going to help everything else, right? And I think now the front end and the back end, right, when you're looking at the cornerback and the safeties, they're so talented. I think the linebackers, I think if they're just solid, I think the defense is going to be fine, right? You bring back Mo Toure, who I'm pretty sure is about 37 years old. You bring back Chase Smith, who I think is 34, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure those guys all have at least 2 or 3 kids at this point, and but they're old, right? They're old, but along with that, again, the age should bring some leadership, some discipline. And so on and so forth. But, again, the guys behind them, I think are exciting, right? Mo Toure kind of started to show what he can do at the end of the year, obviously coming back from injury, but a guy who played his ass off, come into the year in the playoffs, I think played really, really well. Chase Smith, who surprisingly just appeared out of nowhere and just started getting snaps, I feel like. He's been hurt his whole career in Miami. And obviously, you lose Popo Aguirre because, Toure came back, but listen, man, it is what it is, right? We move forward with who's here. And I think some of the names behind, the starters, I think guys, who should be excited about, right? I think I'm super excited about Kellen Wiley. I'd really like to see him get on the field this year. You got Kamal Bonner, you got, Bobby Pruitt and Ezekiel Marcelin and so on and so forth, man. So, you bring Karsten Bush, as a freshman. So I think this is a linebacker room who I think the top guys aren't nearly as talented as the guys, that are backing them up. But I think it's good to have those experienced guys in the middle, and we'll see where that goes. But again, man, the linebacker room just kind of meh about, because I think the majority of snaps are going to go to the 2 old guys.
Yeah.
But I think moving forward, I think it's a room that I like. I like what's coming down the pipe when Smith and Toure are no longer there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, I still like the room. I think the young talent there is very good. I like the way Mo Toure played, especially towards the latter end of last season. I thought he balled out, saved a couple games for us. So I am excited to see how he contributes again this year, even though he's about to collect Social Security. But it was the bottom line. Yeah, I hope he doesn't get offended if he ever sees these shows, man. It's all in love, man. It's nothing bad. He's a lot younger than us, so I mean, he could tell me, hey, well, you're about to be in a coffin soon, so he could probably respond to me that way if he wants to, So,
yeah, but I also don't play football, so so all love, man, all love.
Absolutely.
Listen, man, we're doing nothing but rooting for those guys to be
absolutely
to be old and productive, dudes and knock people's heads off as they come across the middle. So both those guys are. They definitely are. They definitely know where the weight room is at the facility. Let's just say that those guys obviously excel, in the weight room. Miami wants them there for a reason. I think the young guys are going to like playing behind those guys. And, they got a lot to offer, I'm sure, in terms of knowledge and wisdom. And again, guys that I hope, when they're on the field, man, they produce. But obviously, again, a guy like Chase Smith, who's been there for a long time, is again, not that you don't get excited about him. Again, I hope he's really good. It's just behind those guys is where I'm excited, right? Because again, I think there is talent. I think there's some guys that I think when they get on the field and get an opportunity, I think they're going to take advantage of it. And again, man, of all those guys, Kellen Wiley is the guy, man. When you look at the measurables, when you look at what people are saying about him, and again, he's a huge kid. He can run. But again, I think when he gets on the field and gets this opportunity, I think he's the guy who's going to show out.
Yeah, Chase Smith is gonna be really good at rushing the passer. That's one thing he's really good at, is rushing the passer.
Yeah.
And Torres is gonna be a nightmare for running backs as well. But he's also an underrated. He's underrated coverage. So I think that makes him excited. But yeah,
Yeah,
the talent.
Torrey probably has to work on the coverage side of things.
I said, yeah, but he's pretty good. I mean, like it's certain spots. He's pretty good. He was pretty good in the NAM game when he broke up the could have been a potential touchdoun. You know, he basically gouged,
knocked himself out. Hey, knocked himself out.
He did. You know,
that.
yeah, I would if you were to ask me, a better pass coverage linebacker in this roster would be Bobby Pruitt. Bobby Pruitt. Oh, good. If you wanted to, you could also play safety as well if you wanted to. So, but again, he's a little underrated. Depends on the situation and who he's covering. I think Mo could cover. But if I wanted somebody in coverage, it would be Bobby Pruitt. But the young core is very good. They're very big already. Jordan Campbell's the guy we forgot to mention. The kid's big and strong.
Campbell. I was like,
very physical. He's very physical. As well, if you look at his huddle video. Yeah, so I'm excited about him. Marcelin's another one. Marcelin's a dog on special teams. All right, as well. So again, I'm really excited about this linebacker core. But I get why, because you have this fantastic front four, that the linebackers kind of get lost in the shuffle. But I think they'll be very productive this year, especially with the veteranship coming in.
Yeah. I think again, man, Torrey and Chase Smith, man, are downhill type guys. And I like you mentioned, Jordan Campbell is a guy who, by all accounts, is a dude who's is a tackling machine, but also really good in coverage, right? Which you want to see. And again, man, there's some talent back there, man. Again, we definitely forgot about him. But you add him to Kellen Wiley and Zeke and all these other guys, man. And I think you really have to like what you have, for down the pipe, moving forward when Torrey and Chase Smith, are out of eligibility. So yeah, I'm excited about the names, man. Definitely excited about those guys to get on the field and see what we got with them. And then we go to the back end, man. The position group at corner, I should say, right? That we're still waiting to see who they land in terms of a position coach, right? The cornerback room, but a room that whoever steps into, man, is going to like what they see. It's a deep and talented room. Similar to receiver. There's so many body types, man. There's so much talent on that side of or in that particular room that man, whoever steps in, I think is really, really going to like what they see, man. They're just it's a talented room.
Yeah, man. Will Harris is a really good coach as well. Unfortunately, Zach Etheridge, so we'll see how they fill up that position. But it's absolutely loaded from safety to nickel, also to boundary corners as well. Young guys, veterans. And the good thing about the veterans as well is that we got guys with eligibility, right? So we built a lot more depth within our DB room as well, with Xavier Lucas, with Ethan Bonner as well. And then you have, of course, Ethan O'Connor. Ethan O'Connor. I was thinking about the Miami Dolphin. Ethan O'Connor. And then you have, of course, Jabari Antoine, who proved he belongs in the field. Chris Ewald. You got Brody Jennings coming in as well. So we have some studs, young and also some veterans, but with also some eligibility. We talked about Drake Stubbs, earlier on, who decided to flip to Florida. Bryce Fitzgerald has done a good job taking that spot, man. All right, led off freshman, I believe, in defensive backfield with interceptions this season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's going to be back there. Yeah, with 6. He's going to be back there, and he's a ball hawk. So again, whoever comes in, it has a lot of toys to play with as far as the defensive backfield goes. Coverage guys, they can all tackle as well. They communicate well as well within the defensive backfield as well. And they're also, interception machines, and they have experience, which is a good thing.
Yeah. The definitely some big time losses back there, right? When you lose a guy like Keontae Scott, who was just
that one's going to stay.
Listen, you can make the argument that he was the second best player on defense last year.
Yeah.
You can make an argument, a strong argument. He was the second best player on defense last year. It's hard to argue what Jacoby Thomas meant to that, the defense and the safety room, and specifically, right? You look at, who's going to replace those guys. You bring in Omar Thornton from Boston College, who more likely is going to replace Keontae Scott.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what they do with the Jacoby Thomas, departure. Obviously, Bryce Fitzgerald better in coverage than a Jacoby Thomas. Jacoby Thomas more of a guy he wasn't bad in coverage, but a guy who was more of a support the run, type of
defender.
Hell of a tackler, right? Extremely, extremely sound tackler. Jacoby Thomas had his moments, right? That pick six he had against NC State and the whole deal. But again, I think a safety tandem of of Bryce Fitzgerald and Zachariah Poyser is something that I can get behind. I'd have zero issue, with that. Assuming that those would be the starters. You've got Day back there who I think is a guy who probably going to see more snaps this year. He's a terror on special teams. You've got some other guys back there, man. So you brought in the transfer from Oregon State, Conrad Hussey. So he's going to be a good depth guy. And again, man, the corners. Listen, when you look at your top four guys, back there, when you look at Damari, OJ Frederic,
yep.
You got Xavier Lucas and Ethan O'Connor. Listen, then you add Omar Thornton to that. I mean, look. I mean, who's gonna be throwing against those guys? I mean, we'll see, but you're gonna have a hard time. Another year of those, second year of Xavier Lucas in the program. Hopefully, Damari Brown is going to be healthy this year for a full season. Ethan O'Connor another year in the program, right? OJ Frederic, going into his third year, right? And then what they've got behind them in terms of talent. Listen, man, we're gonna see. We're gonna see who's gonna throw against this defense. And against those guys. I mean, you're going to have your hands full. They're going to be able to bring guys in waves. We're going to see, down distance and matchup. That's going to determine, I guess, who's on the field. But man, you've got a lot to work with in that cornerback room, man. So whoever they bring in is going to be really, really excited when they step in there.
Yeah, and again, like the young talent alone with Jabari Antoine, Jalen Seatbolt Waters coming in as well.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the kid's highlight film in the huddle, he is a blanket on a receiver. Like, he loves press coverage and he loves being a cover guy. So this is a very loaded backfield, and it's gonna be an offensive coordinator's nightmare, because you have the front four, you have some solid two, solid two linebackers, and then you have a very strong 5-man defensive backfield that can stop the run if need to, but they can also pick six you as well. So and also they're very fundamentally sound in terms of tackling as well. So I mean, this is the coaching staff with Will Harris, as well. Whoever they bring in as the next DB coach, I'm not even going to predict anymore who's the next DB coach is going to be, because we're all wrong regardless. Waste of time, exactly. It's going to be a great season. Again, the schedule sets itself up for Miami to be really, really good. It really does. You don't start off with a Notre Dame to start the year. You don't start with a Notre Dame. Your toughest early game is Clemson. Then you go to Notre Dame as well. So I think that, and by the time we face the Irish, the team will be more set. Whatever wrinkle they had to get rid of, should be gone by then, and it's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to that game in South Bend.
Yeah, man. You're looking at this program right now, man, and it's hard not to be excited. I've learned. I think we both have over the course of the last 2 decades that you have to kind of tread lightly in terms of excitement and the whole deal, just because, right? Because you never know what can happen. But I think, unlike the last 2 decades, I think this program is differently set up at this point. The health of the program, when you're looking at just alignment from the top down, right? Which was what's hard to accomplish at times, over the last 20 years. Dan Radakovich, and the school, right? The president, which is was it Rudy Gonzalez, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think that's
Joe Echeverria.
Joe Echeverria. Rudy Gonzalez does something, with the school also. But yeah, everybody from the president to the AD down to the NIL program and boosters and everything like that, man. It just seems like everything is going in and everybody's pulling in the same direction, right? There's no ulterior agendas. There's nobody, leaking information, and there's nothing getting out in terms of, BS and everything like that, man. The program just seems really healthy right now. That's the best way I can put it, man. The culture just seems like it's going in the right direction. You got the right guys, coming in. They're retaining guys. The money, doesn't seem to be something that's getting in the way, or you're not hearing resentment and everything like that. For people making more than maybe other people are and everything like that, man. Again, the program just seems really healthy, man. And it starts with Mario Cristobal. it's who he's brought in and the culture they're building. And I think just really, really good things are on the horizon for this program.
Yeah, my friend, I really agree with you. And again, I'm excited. I can't wait till spring game, whenever that is, to see exactly just a little bit of a taste of how good this football team could
be. The dates that I saw, I think recently were March 24th. I think is the first day of spring practice. Obviously,
I'm talking about the game itself. The spring game.
But
March 24th, I think it's the first day.
Yeah, the first day of spring practice, and obviously starting a little bit later in other programs, just based on how long they played. Man, but it's on the horizon, man. The off season workouts are going on, and you're starting to see some guys are out there getting it in terms of working out and conditioning and everything. And so some exciting names and everything being reported. And like I said, man, just you look at what the roster looks like, and what they can do with the schedule. Hopefully, just everything. I feel like it's really, really lining up well, man. I'm really excited about the 26 season. Really excited to see what the product is like on the field. And I think sky's the limit, man. I think sky's the limit for this team, this program moving forward. And we'll see where it goes, man. But I think everybody can agree the right man is at the helm running this thing.
Good. Couldn't agree with you more, man. I'm really happy. I really am happy. I'm stoked.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. So yeah, man. That is what we got for you guys, man. Unless you got anything else, bro.
Yeah, well, I just want to announce. I know I've been a little bit on a light hiatus the last couple of weeks. I've been doing Q Show, of course. I've been doing my shorts to keep things going, but I've been doing some things around the house, So I kind of moved my studio a little bit around, so I was able to make room today, to be on Q Show. But tomorrow at noon, I will be doing a Possible Kane segment. I saw Nick Lalier's name across the chat. Actually, we're doing a Possible Kane segment on Mr. Lanier himself, the wide receiver out of now Carroll City High. All right, he was at Northwestern, but now he's at Carroll City. He followed that new coaching staff that opened up at the school. Is going to open up the school for the 2026 season, and a special announcement as well. I will be interviewing on Friday. I'm going to record Friday evening to air Saturday at noon. I'm going to be interviewing Alik Terry, the offensive line coach of Oregon at Oregon. Okay, yes, the Oregon Ducks. Their O-line coach, Alik Terry, who is from Miami, Florida, by the way, is going to be on 305 Sports Now. I'll be recording Miami time 8:30, his time 4:30, and then I'll air the episode Saturday at noon, so you guys can check out, one of our own becoming a successful coach at a Power 4 school that made the Final Four this past season and almost made the national championship as well.
That's awesome, dude. Really, that's super cool, man.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
When you told me about that, man, I was really impressed. Let him know to stay out of South Florida unless he's visiting family. just deliver that message for me.
I will.
Visiting family.
He's a nice guy, man.
Let me tell you, family, stay out of South Florida, bro.
He is a nice guy. He's a very, very nice guy, very genuine, humble person. And I'm sure he'll laugh at what you just said. I'm gonna let him know on the air. I'm sure he'll laugh at what you just said. He'll probably tell you not a chance, bro.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm aware. So, but no, man. Hey, that's super cool, man. So everybody, go ahead and check out that interview airing Saturday, man. That's definitely a great get right there, man. Hopefully that goes well.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's not just be straight Oregon football. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Q. It's gonna be just straight Oregon football. It's gonna be an origin story. He's gonna tell his story of how he was a kid, how he got into coaching, and how he ended up at Oregon. And then of course I'm gonna ask about Oregon Ducks football because I want to compare it to what the Canes are doing down here. But it's gonna be basically just how a young man from our roots from South Florida ended up at one of the highest levels of college football in a major Power 4 program.
That's awesome. Where do you play at in South Florida?
Honestly, man, I do not remember. I know Larry Bluestein actually mentioned him 2 months ago on Donald's show because he was referencing. Yeah.
The encyclopedia that is Larry Bluestein.
Yes, man. Yes. Yeah. Alik loves him, and Coach Terry likes him, and we even cracked some jokes about Larry in a nice way through text. But obviously, I'm going to do my homework before he comes on, and I'll be able to answer that question for you guys on Saturday.
Awesome, dude. That's awesome. Yeah, man. I know you'll do your homework, man. That'll definitely be a good show, man. Looking forward to seeing that on Saturday, man. So everybody go ahead and follow us 305 Sports Now, Hate Football Pod on X. Our boy Adrian, who couldn't be with us tonight, but a Rainy Day, pod on X. Also, all our channels on YouTube, man. Everybody on FTSN, my boy Bobby Finstock, and everybody, Lou from Dade, and everybody, man. Everybody on those networks, man, putting out some cool programming and some cool material, man. So for my boy Will, I am Q. Appreciate you guys tuning in on this 305 day. Happy 305 to everybody in South Florida. And until next time, talk to you soon. Peace.